Good evening, gentlemen. How are we?
Hello, hello. How's it going?
What's up?
Frank, I kind of like that whole Matrix thing you had going on there, man. That was pretty
I know
cool.
I was gonna hide behind my hands and like come out when it was time, but I
Yeah,
didn't.
man. I love it.
So what's
Woo!
up?
I'm digging the light that you got, David. It's looking good. I know I said it on the last show, but now we're
Yeah,
live, so I have to let everyone else know it's sick.
it's got a
What's
little
that? The
bit of
purple in the background?
a
Yeah,
little bit of flavor to it.
it
You'll
looks
see it
great.
evolves. It changes colors. It does all kinds of cool stuff.
Heck
Look
yeah.
at you. You have too much fun with the toys.
Well, you
Oh,
know, you got to do something, right? I got to make up for all of this. Like if I had all of this looking good, then I could make up for all of this, right?
hey man, but I mean, you're famous enough, and you have a shirt with your name on it.
This is a throwback one too, by the way.
That is.
Old school. Yeah.
Right?
Um.
Isn't it funny how like name logos have changed
Yeah.
now? They were blocky then. Now it's like the big thing is the script logos.
Yeah, it used to be like graffiti for a while. Everybody was doing the whole graffiti thing. Yep.
Yeah, it's funny
We're
how
just
that goes.
creatures of you know what I think it maybe somewhat comes from the fact that like music doesn't stick around. Some songs do, but a lot of songs, they're here today, gone tomorrow, and I think our brains start to be conditioned that way a little bit as entertainers. We just start getting that way. So real quick before we dive into everything, just want to give a quick shout out to everybody watching today. We'd love for you guys to drop in the comments who's watching, where you're watching from, and so on and so forth. Also, right above me and Frank here, if you haven't done so yet, don't forget to join our text club where we will notify you of upcoming shows, or if we're not going to be doing a show, or, for example, like tomorrow night, out of character, we're going to be doing actually a show 2 nights in a row. So tomorrow night, we're also going to be doing a special episode of Wedding Business Growth. And it's going to be pretty exciting. This was you guys have, if you've been watching the show for the last couple of episodes, we've been talking about the Savannah Bananas baseball team and my newfound love with them and their owner Jesse Cole. And last week, Nick and I had an opportunity to do an interview with Jesse, and I'll tell you right now, Nick, I'll let you obviously speak for yourself and your takeaway from it. But I'm telling you, I'm blown away at how much thought and how much determination and progression and everything that they put into every decision they make in every element of what they do. And I was just super impressed.
Yeah, I was too, and it really is. They always have the fan in first. I know that was kind of like the big idea was fan first entertainment, and you could definitely tell that their every decision they make, they reverse engineer to start with the fan. So
Yeah.
it's really awesome.
Yep. So tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are going to, it's probably going to be an abbreviated show, to be honest with you. The interview was about 20 minutes. So we're going to jump on. And we figured it would make more sense to give that its separate airing versus trying to bundle everything up together tonight. Also, as just a promo to them. Or to Jesse, I should say, and of course the team as well. I'm going to pop this up real quick. So speaking of Fans First, which is the actual name of their company, it's also the name of Jesse's new book that is shipping 1 week from tonight. So I'm telling you, if you want to buy a book and learn about somebody who will make you think about how you do your business in a completely different way, this is what you want. This is what you want. It's a fun read. It's I would say probably an easy read, and it's going to open your eyes to looking at how you do business and how you relate to your client and your events that you do in a way you may have never before done so. I don't think I can sell it any better than that.
That was fantastic.
And I don't make any commission, by the way. This is just my heart, truthfully.
Yeah.
Frank, we don't hear you, bud. You're muted.
Sorry.
That's
no,
okay.
my kid walked by and he was listening to something, and I was like, told him to quiet down. I forgot.
Hey man, it's real life.
I was gonna say we don't make any commission. However, if you enter the code wedding, no, I'm just joking.
Wedding plan.
Too funny. I'm also going to post this link in the. I'll post it in the chat for all the different places that we're broadcasting tonight. So it's an easier link just to click on. If you want to click on that link and go to it, you're welcome to do that. So that's going out. And then so if you can join us tomorrow night, please do. We'd love to have you join us tomorrow night. If you're not able to, obviously you can catch the replay of that. But it's well worth jumping onto and just listening to everything that Jesse has to share. And again, Nick, I think you would agree with me. In the just shy of 22 minutes that we talked to him, it was action packed from start to finish.
Yeah, we probably did like an hour's worth of material in 20 minutes. It was fantastic. Great. It's really information packed. So you better check it out. It's really good.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah. Frank, you haven't even seen it yet. That's true.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna watch it live with everybody else that tunes in, and then give instant feedback.
There you go. I love
Jesse's just like absolutely bursting with ideas. Like, I mean, we were coming up with stuff like on the spot for like how you can, market yourself and grow your business and do it in a customer centered way, which I thought was just so cool. So.
Yeah, and I think just a small little spoiler alert. I think one of the things I really loved about what he said was, so often businesses are in the business of doing things like better or faster or something and he said, focus on being the only one who does X.
Yeah.
I thought, how interesting is that? It's amazing to set yourself apart when you can say we're the only one who does, whatever fill in the blank is.
Yeah.
I don't
want to give too much away.
I know. I was going to say, I'm not going to give any more away. We'll let the rest of it speak for itself tomorrow. All right. So other than that, fellas, Nick, you were in Portland. Tell us about it, man.
Man, it was so much fun. It was a great experience. So I never had done a West Coast wedding. I guess it was kind of like a bucket list thing, but it was just really awesome opportunity. Some friends were getting married. One of my friends knew someone who was getting married and they referred me to her. And I got the opportunity to go out there. It was absolutely gorgeous. Got to do like a full wedding highlight video for them. So I flew the drone out there. So there's like gorgeous mountain footage. It was a beautiful day and it was just super fun. But it was a great opportunity, great experience. So just kind of getting back in the groove from that.
What were some of the because if many people don't know about Nick and I both live in Florida, Frank being in Virginia. So what were maybe some of the differences that you experienced in maybe the flow of the event or anything at all like that compared to how we do things here?
Yeah. It was way more laid back here or in Portland, and at least in this wedding that I did. I know David and I do some like pretty baller type events here in Florida, not to brag, but their weddings are pretty sick. But this was like a super like chill one. The venue was a farm. They had it in like a pretty like giant tent. It's still really cold up there. Like it was in the 30s at night. So they had like heaters and stuff. So that was like kind of a different feel, but everyone was super nice. The photographer didn't mind that I was from the completely opposite side of the country. We got to talk about business too and marketing and stuff like that and like kind of how things are done. And man, the West Coast is fertile grounds for weddings and it's really good. So but no, the flow is pretty similar, but yeah, it was great. The community I think just expands to the entire country. It's so cool to go to a completely different place and immediately connect with vendors that are like literally 3,000 miles away from you, but could still like talk about the same things and different experiences. And she's using HoneyBook too, like all the way out there. I was like, oh, you use HoneyBook? Yeah, sick. But I use HoneyBook too. Like it was just awesome. So super, super cool. And the camaraderie is fantastic. So.
Dude, that's awesome, man. I mean, the wedding industry, right? I think, despite some of those like things that, right, you don't know about that area, they don't know about this area, we don't know about your area, there's a lot of similarities though across the board, right? And so, I think connecting with other wedding vendors, no matter where it is always pretty easy. I went to my cousin's wedding in New York, like in 2018, 17, whatever. And I ended up like behind the booth with the DJ, like chatting it up. Right.
That's so awesome.
And, he wasn't you always think like to yourself about like, oh, should I even walk over there and talk to, especially as a guest,
Yeah.
because I know what I think when a guest walks over to me. Hey man, are you using Serato?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
buddy. Like, yeah, I am. But it's cool how like the wedding community is tight, even when it's like so far away and you don't know anybody, and then you just walk into it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one difference I will say real quick is they have a like, and you, Frank, I'm sure you do too. There's a wedding season. Like, there's no season down here. That's one
Yeah.
huge difference. Like David will attest. Like, dude, it's just all year, pretty much except August because it's just too hot. But like, she's like, oh, so what wedding are you in the season? I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
She's like, oh, this is my second wedding of the season. She's like, yeah, the season starts in like April, May, and like goes all summer, and then it's done in like October. Frank, is that like about where you're at as well, or?
Yeah, it's March. It's March through November, and then
Yeah,
all the outdoor venues, shut down December through February, Marchish.
right.
But of course, there's enough indoor venues to find like plenty of work. But when
Mhm.
people say like in season around here, it would be like mid to late March through mid to late November, basically.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
people ask us all the time, "Hey, when does your wedding season slow down?" And we're like, "What year is this?" So probably 2024 is when it. But that's
Yeah.
just right now.
Right.
Ask me 6 months from now, and that'll probably change.
Yeah,
So I don't think we ever have a slow season in Florida for sure.
crazy.
And then I remember real quickly, and we'll put a bow on this, but I remember the first time I ever went up to do an event for Eric Wenning, who's been on our show before, my buddy up in Pittsburgh. And well, I was very lucky. Actually, the very first one I ever got to do up there for him was at the Pittsburgh Pirates baseball stadium, which was really cool. And if you guys know anything about me, and I'm a huge baseball fan, so that was phenomenal. But the thing about it was the event was like, I'm not even kidding. Like, I think it was like 9 hours long. And
Wow.
I'm getting here to the point where I'm like, shit, do I even have enough music for this event without having to
Wow.
play repeats? Like, I'm thinking back to my radio days. Like, how long can I wait until I can play this song again, but people won't remember that I already played it? Like, it was very, very different in that regard.
Wow. That's wild. That's super, super crazy, but fun. That's a great experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York area is like the weddings are a totally different beast there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or just events in general, not even just weddings, just events.
Absolutely. Well, you guys ready to jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I say let's do it. And by the way, once again, those of you guys that are watching live right now, please feel free to drop in the comments. We'd love to hear from y'all, and we always love to show some comment love to our viewers that are out there watching us live. And then, of course, hearing the replay, if we see your comments, we usually want to jump back at you as well and see if we can answer any questions or offer any advice or anything and all like that. I mean, that's what Wedding Business Growth is all about. When Nick and I started it, the two things that we said were, education and community, and that's what we've continued to try to do, going on almost 2 years now, believe it or not, guys. This is crazy, so it's just been a lot of fun, and we want to keep doing it. So speaking of weddings, tonight we're going to talk about small weddings, which is very interesting, the small wedding market. And I think we have one of the industry's leading experts in this particular topic, and excited to have her on with us. So let me read her bio before we have her join us. So our guest tonight is Morgan Childs, and Morgan Childs has been has been called the Elopement Expert and named top wedding planner in Hawaii by both Destination I Do and Modern Luxury Magazine. With 18 years of event industry experience, Morgan got her start working in one of the principal planning firms in New York City, producing high-profile events for A-list clients. After falling in love with the wedding planning, Morgan moved back to her home state in 2006 to open Moana Events, bringing her distinct sense of style and knowledge of events to Hawaii. Moana Events has been honored to have planned celebrity and high-profile weddings and has been featured on television and in more than 20 national and international publications, as well as over 200 online features. In 2015, she launched Modern Elopement, a luxury elopement experience for couples after noticing a lack of market for beautiful, intimate wedding options. Wow. I don't even know that we're worthy to have such a celebrity on our show, but I'm happy that we have an opportunity to have her join us. So without further ado, let us welcome Morgan Childs. Hey, Morgan, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Thanks for being on.
Doing well. And sorry, I probably butchered up a little bit of that intro, but you always, I get so excited when I read these things, right?
It was long. No need for that.
Well, how's life in Hawaii?
Well, it's, midday, so a little different.
Yeah.
It's great. It's sunny, beautiful. It's funny hearing you guys talk about seasons. We definitely do not have a wedding season. So if you want to get married at any time, everybody's excited to come to Hawaii and do that. So I hear you with the Florida no seasons down there.
Yeah. No, I think people would look for any excuse to go to Hawaii. It's like, hey, why should we go to Hawaii? I know, let's get married.
I actually tell people, be careful who you invite because everybody's going to say yes. Like, it's not the normal, like 30% says no. I'm like, no, you're going to have like everyone figure out how to get here and come to your wedding.
Yeah, it's one of those deals where you're like, I don't care if I don't have the money. I'll figure out a way to be there.
Exactly. It's pretty great.
Well, let's dive right into talking about this small wedding market, because when you sent this over to us as a topic, it was really, really interesting because my brain immediately goes to like those tiny house type things and that whole concept, and I'm like, I know she can't be talking about necessarily that, but tell us a little bit about that and why wedding professionals should be paying attention to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the small wedding market is essentially just the part of the wedding industry that are couples having smaller weddings. Generally, I like to say 30 guests or less. And there are some wedding pros that say 50 guests or less. I think that usually only applies to very particular markets or cultural events where it's so huge that 50 actually is ridiculously small. But for most people, it's about 30 and under. So it's just encompassing all of the vendors doing things in that area and all the couples who are choosing to have smaller weddings. So that's all the small wedding market means. But I like that term because it encompasses a lot of different things. And as maybe you've sort of been hearing the past 2 years, a lot of new terminology like pop-up weddings or tiny weddings or micro weddings. Those are all coming from the small wedding market. So it really encompasses more than just a small wedding that has fewer guests, but essentially is doing cocktail hour, reception, dancing, speeches. It's more than just that. It's really encompassing elopements, adventure elopements. It's encompassing pop-up weddings and tiny weddings at chapels, things like that. So it's really broad section of the wedding market. And what most people don't really know is that it's been trending for a long time. So this is not like 2020 flash in the pan, everybody's going to go back to doing larger weddings. This has been trending for a while. So even I just recently heard 2012, Google started to see an uptick in couples searching for elopements. So that term was kind of becoming like way more popular that year, as before that it wasn't really on the radar. And I started hearing about it in 2014 when the word elopement started coming out with like a different context to it, like a intentional elopement, maybe having some guests there. And then I heard about pop-up weddings coming out of Australia, and that was really interesting to me. And then I sort of realized that I wanted to create something for that market. So I started that company in 2014. It was like sort of a different brand of my company. So as a background, I did like high-end full service weddings. So huge weddings like you would do, destination weddings, and everything was typical and normal. But I had all these couples who wanted to do 25 guests, and all of a sudden nothing really worked for them. The cost was astronomical. They were like, I'm quoting like 2,000 a head, and they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, the wedding industry isn't really made for you to just have 25 people and have a standard wedding. So I created something different. We launched it. But in 2018 was where we saw 3x growth with our company all of a sudden, like did nothing different, wasn't advertising, wasn't doing anything, saw this huge interest in couples looking for small wedding solutions. And since then, since I've been talking to all of these other wedding vendors in different parts of the country and even globally, 2018 really was kind of a time where couples were like, hey, we need something else. Maybe we want something smaller. What's out there that's not like a typical invite all of your friends and family type solution. And then, of course, we come to 2020. All of a sudden, this is hugely in the mainstream and all anybody can do. So you're hearing about, all of these different vendors who have already been doing it, like myself, ready to do these type of things, or all these vendors getting really creative and coming up with super cool concepts to get couples wed during a time where they can't have a huge wedding. So I think that the wedding industry really needs to understand that it's been around for a while. There's a lot of people who specialize in this. Couples really like this. But now, since it's entered the mainstream, not only is it going to become something that more couples are now aware of, so now they're like, oh, I never thought we could do that. Can we actually not invite everybody to our wedding? That sounds great. But then more vendors have made solutions and options and concepts for them. So you have this dual, growth of the market in couples wanting that and finding out that that's something they can do, and then vendors providing those services. So I really think it's something that whether you want to service that part of the industry or not, it's not going anywhere. It's definitely a hugely growing part of the wedding industry. I would probably say the fastest growing part of the wedding industry.
So interesting. And I'm glad you brought it up about the fact that it's not just like it's a new thing, because I personally would have right off the bat looked at it as something that was kind of birthed out of COVID and all of those types of things. I mean, I've heard of like elopements, but as you mentioned, probably in a completely different context and a little bit different looking at it from a different lens, so to speak. So I think it's really interesting that this is something that's actually not just out of nowhere from COVID. Really cool.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, one of the my high school teachers back in 2013, he told me that he was getting eloped or having an elopement type of wedding. And that was the first time I'd ever heard about that. And I was like, oh man, that's a really different concept. And one of the things I think he mentioned was like the thing about cost, like weddings are so expensive. Maybe we could talk about some of like the top maybe reasons that people are having these smaller weddings, and is costs involved in that at all? Or what are some of the top reasons couples are choosing these smaller weddings?
Yeah, cost is number one. And I think it's important to note that the reasons why people want to do small weddings are not just pandemic related. So like I said, it started before then, but there's a lot of vendors who were like, oh, people are going to go back to having huge weddings because they can. It's worth noting that some couples won't make that choice. And so what happened, I think, around 2018 and would have continued to gradually happen in our wedding industry is that a lot of couples were like, this is a lot of money. Like, this is a huge amount of expense for one day. Maybe they didn't have their parents helping. Maybe it just wasn't important to them. And so budget is the number one thing that we hear why couples want to have a smaller wedding, because ultimately a wedding is a per person cost. It's the easiest way to think about it. And so a lot of couples are determining, let's just have, I want to spend less. Let's go ahead and have a smaller wedding. And weddings aren't ever going to get less expensive. And I think the wedding vendors need to know that our wedding market is also going to change, because eventually, it's going to become really costly to host 200 guests for the full deal, right? And so there's going to be a lot of couples who, as much as we want to think everybody has everything to spend on a wedding, they really might not. And then you have on the flip side couples who might have it, but they are thinking, well, do I want to have 100 people and then sacrifice some of the things that I wanted? Or do I want to have 30 people and have everything that we're excited about? So I think our, new generations coming up are being a little bit more discerning about the type of wedding experience they want. And so budget comes into play in kind of a lot of different ways. It's not just can't afford it, but it's also what they want to use it for. So that's definitely number one. And number two is stress. So again, another factor, it doesn't have anything to do really with pandemic related, but couples are working full-time jobs. They're planning things with their families who may not be all that easy to get along with, or maybe your in-laws aren't all that easy to get along with. And so we have all these couples that come to us and are like, we were planning a big wedding and we just decided to elope. We can't do it anymore. It's causing so much chaos with our family and stress that we don't have time to do it. We're just let's just elope and get it done with. So I think it's people have careers and really, again, rethinking priorities a little bit, that the stress of having that huge event, if you don't have the means to pay for an awesome planner who's taking care of a lot of it, or a really supportive family situation, that a lot of couples are kind of just we're just not really in a place where we want to plan that huge event. And then the third reason is generational. And so I'll say generational, and then also, generational, I think is a good way to say it, is that, again, these couples are a little bit more savvy about what their options are and about what they can do. And so when presented with, hey, what's important to us as a couple? What do we value? Maybe it's we want to put a down payment at our house and not have this huge wedding. And that becomes a situation where you have this couple who, wants to have this occasion, but maybe needs to do it in a different way because they don't want to spend this, $70,000 on this day, or just don't have the means to do it. But a lot of times I'm just seeing that it's not just about the means to do it. It's just that their choices are different. They really are making different choices. They don't feel the need to invite everybody. They don't want to have their parents' wedding. They don't want to be super traditional. All of that ties into, we want to do something different. And then the small wedding market is a really good fit because, in essence, the small wedding market itself is very non-traditional, which I can talk about a little bit, but that's kind of one of the things about it that a lot of people resonate with. And then I'll say the fourth big one is experience. And since a lot of couples just want to redefine what a wedding means, what it is, they might be like, hey, we want to go to Italy for a week with 20 of our friends and have this amazing full out wedding experience. And we want to have 5 events. We don't want to just do one big day, spend all that money on that day. And then there's couples who are like, we want an adventure elopement. We want to go up in a helicopter to this exotic waterfall and have our wedding there. Or we want to, hike to the Antarctic and go on a cruise and do it there. There's so many different ways. And the popularity of destination weddings is sort of fueling also that ability to rethink the wedding experience. And in general, small weddings are always going to lend themselves better to something that's non-traditional, something that's, maybe a big ticket item, because you don't have that cost of that one big day, but then you also don't have the logistics of 150 people, right? So those are the 4 major reasons. There are other reasons, but it's worth noting that I would have told you that those were the reasons in 2018 people were eloping. So those are still really good reasons.
So many questions that come to mind for me immediately, thinking about, what you said about cost and the cost of what I mean, anybody who was in the industry back in 2008, 2009, when there was the depression, if you think about the couple of years leading up to that, I know that, we were kind of in a position, I kind of jokingly say, but we were kind of in a position where, you felt like your customers were like, here's my checkbook, I've already signed it, just fill the rest of it out. they didn't care, and there was no too expensive, there was no nothing, and I know this is going to probably sound the opposite of how I normally am, because I always say, get what you can get and build the business you can build. But I do think there was a little bit of all of us getting to the point where it's like, where is that line where it becomes too much? And I guess that's defined probably by the purchaser more so than the seller, because it boils down to value. But we still have to at some point kind of look in the mirror and say, like, when is too much too much? And that might be a controversial thing to say, but I think the point is that I think that was a kind of a little of a reset to be able to say, okay, let's, as an industry and as a just a society, like, let's reevaluate what is really important to us and what we put value on. So I think it's interesting that you brought that up. I also think it starts to spur these thoughts of like, okay, if this trend of going to this smaller experience happens, and this either with a smaller guest list or a different way of how things happen, then where does that line start, where some of the different vendors might actually even be getting eliminated from even needing to be a part of that? So for example, as an entertainer, if they're going up in a helicopter to go get married on the top of a waterfall, as you use the example of, there's a pretty good chance they probably don't need me or Frank to be there, so that's an interesting part of it as well.
I love all of that. So that's why I think that vendors need to think about it, because there's so much education in this industry that simply tells you do less wedding for a higher price. That's your business model, right? And eventually where you get with that business model, and I can say, I won't go into it, but I've sort of reached that, David. Like, I got to that place where I was like, okay, I'm doing this. And I realized that that's a horrible business model for myself personally, because I was the only person who could do those things. And as a planner, it was like every couple wanted to talk to me. I had to be so available. And once you're doing like super luxury, high six-figure weddings, you can't take a day off. You can't be like, oh, sorry, that's, I'm not going to be available for this thing. I'm not going to be available. So it almost was like the need for me increased. And then I didn't have any freedom, and I didn't realize, because that was my goal. Like, I wanted to get there. So in this whole elopement thing kind of flipped it on its head for me. And I realized, like, I think as an industry, we really need to work as businesses, not just as I'm passionate about what I do and I'm an artist. That's a big hurdle in our industry, because we all are artists. Everybody, right? The makeup artist, the cake person, almost everybody is an artist. And so we don't think about it like a flat out business because we're passionate about it. But as a flat out business, I don't see where this goes, that the average wedding costs 70 grand and every couple can afford that. Like, I don't see that happens. So that's why I think it's really smart for us right now to start thinking about what alternatives look like, what our couples are asking for. They're having different weddings. They're excited about different experiences, and we should be the one defining those for them. And I think there's so much opportunity when we define those to say, like, just what you said, right? You're like, hey, if I'm a DJ and they're going on an adventure elopement, I'm not going to fit in. Right. But one of the trends that we're also seeing is having a big party called a happily ever after party, where everybody's like getting together, and you fully need a DJ. So it might not look like a wedding, but would you be smart to sort of incorporate some of that language in your marketing so that a couple would think like, hey, I could still use him. I don't have to be doing a wedding. Yep. And that's what I want vendors to think about in every part of the industry. This isn't just a photographer planner thing. It's everybody. And if we don't innovate, I think we're going to be left behind. Not like just money alone is going to become a huge hurdle for the wedding industry, but also couples want something different. And if you are looking at the macro trends, the long-term trends, less couples are getting married every year. Yeah, this year is an anomaly because of what happened. Right. But we've been trending down for like at least 7 years.
Yeah, a long time.
And I think it's actually more than that, right? So I think we need to pay attention as the industry. Less people want to get married, but will they not want to get married if we offer them awesome solutions that aren't costing an arm and a leg, and we're developing businesses that aren't relying on huge high ticket prices only? So that's my thoughts.
Man, that's gold right there. Frank, I'm going to kick it over to you. I know you haven't said much yet, so I want to make sure you get a chance to jump in.
No, yeah, no, you're good. So, I mean, I was just kind of thinking, you know, a little bit about, right? Like, there's always going to be a diversity in couple too, right? So while it's equally as important, like you just said, while it's equally as important to have that verbiage in there, the happily ever after party, right? It's also depending on what you want to do with your business, right? Because maybe you do want to pivot and go that direction, which is cool. But if you want to be able to service both sides of the fence, right? Small, big, however you come into it, right? Then you also don't want to lose sight on whatever your original product was, or improving the original product, or, you know, learning how to define all the products separately so it's nice and clear for everybody. And I know this is actually a little off the path that we had set here, but I'm just curious, and you mentioned it, did this elopement business, was it breeded out of demand, or did you want to do it and then the demand followed? Like, what got you into it especially when you're doing these large luxury weddings, right? Like, that's a huge difference. Even though you're providing a luxury experience to a smaller group of people, like, what made you make that turn?
Yeah, so I would say it was a little bit of both. I was being asked for it, and I realized we couldn't really do it. And then I also genuinely thought, and I think this is such a good way to operate as a business owner too. I had been a part of, you know, hundreds of weddings at that point. I was like, what would I do? I wouldn't do any of this. I would go to Italy with 20 of my friends and have this amazing, intimate experience. So I thought, why don't I just create that? See if I could do something like that would work for my couples. And so that's what I created. And truly, it was a very slow growth. I mean, I had a lot of work on the other side. I couldn't pay attention to it. We had like one couple, and then like 3 couples, and then like 9 couples. And then all of a sudden it went crazy. And once I realized like people were like really needing a different solution, and this was something that, you know, as a planner, being on site as a wedding, you know, just like you are all vendors, that we see what happens in a different way than, you know, if we're just intellectually looking at a wedding or attending a wedding. So I knew what was, you know, going to work and what they needed versus just what they wanted. So it definitely was hand in hand. It was something that I heard, created from my own perspective. Like, definitely no one was like, do this weird micro wedding elopement, you know, hybrid thing that we came up with. But once I had it out there, I was like, oh, people love this, and my couples are happy, and that's great. So I think it's a process. And that's also one of the things that I would encourage vendors to do is, in no way, shape, or form am I saying everybody's going to have a small wedding. No, of course not. That's not going to happen. But there's a whole part of the industry that people might not be paying attention to or thinking is just a flash in the pan, and it's not. And so I think as a vendor, if you want to, I mean, I just like to diversify my products, my income. So I think, you know, what's something that I could offer? So I really love for most vendors to just have a bigger offering, have a smaller offering, figure out how that works, because those profits are going to be different. Your workflow is going to be different. It's just a different way to think about it. But I think right now the wedding industry it's flipped on its head. And I really see couples rethinking, like, why are we doing it this way? Because this isn't something that we thought of. This is what our parents did and our friends are doing. And it just might not work for a lot of people. So, yeah.
Frank, if I could jump in for just 2 seconds here. Sorry, I just wanted to, for some reason, we're not getting our comments from Facebook. So I went over and looked at the different places on Facebook we are broadcasting right now, and just wanted to give a quick shout out to Chris Hintz, because he was commenting earlier, and I didn't want him to think we were ignoring him. We just didn't see him. And also, we had a question come in on YouTube from Rob, who said, "Okay, so why would you give up a prime Saturday night for an elopement? We are already turning away multiple weddings each week because we are not available. We stopped DJing anything but large events."
Awesome question, Rob. You shouldn't. So I encourage all small weddings to be midweek. So I really love for those to be, Monday through Friday, maybe on a Sunday if that works for you. But Monday through Thursday is really prime spot, right? We're not going to be competing with big weddings who need those weekends to have everybody taking time off of work. I wouldn't even recommend trying for it. So these are midweek solutions. Again, that's why they pair really well with the larger products that you do have, but they can fill your calendar in a different way. And I mean, really, it's quite sustainable. It also lends itself to maybe not having you as the lead person. Maybe you have an associate do these smaller ones. And so you're making more money because you're getting work, coming in that you wouldn't be having come in otherwise. So yes, I wouldn't recommend that. And we actually, even in my company, now that we don't do anything else, don't do Saturdays.
Don't give away your Saturdays, Rob. That's what I got out of that.
Don't do it, Rob. I'm not asking you to. I think you should do it, but it's like, you can't fill every day. And even, as a DJ, if you're going to have a huge gig, but you knew you could partner, that's another thing, David, is that partnering is a really good way. So for venues already providing these packages, planners already providing these packages, I think you get creative, you have, solutions for them. Hey, we can have a DJ for this intimate dinner for 3 hours, and here's the price point on that, and here's the we only do XYZ. I do know DJs who are doing that, and I think it's a great way to not have to even get the business by yourself. So there's a lot of ways to think about it. The small wedding market as a whole is very different. Earlier we talked a little bit about David, you talked about when you were talking about pricing, about kind of like value, like what's to say, like, hey, why are you spending all of this money on my service? And that's what I think that we have to rethink a little bit, because couples who are doing small weddings do not want to, the majority of them, sorry to burst your bubble, do not want to pay the same amount of money as a large wedding. Some of them will, absolutely. There's no one size fits all here. But a lot of them just want a different value proposition. So I think that we create something for them that's specifically tailored, that works. And again, works for your business. It's profitable. You know how to manage that. You're doing it on different days. It's, it works for you. This has to be a smart business thing for vendors. But I think it's just time that people figure out, like, is there a way that I can incorporate this? Do I want to do these? Most of us love intimate weddings. How do you jump into that? So you don't have to give everything up, but it's creating a different value there. And I think that's important. So what I was going to say is small weddings, they like easy and they like packaged. So that's a good way to jump on board with what someone's already doing.
Gotcha. And just to kind of piggyback off that a little bit too, just to kind of Rob's points here is, if it doesn't work for your business, Rob, then this isn't this isn't a show where we're trying to sell anybody on anything that we've got any guests on here. We really just want to show people all the different aspects of the industry, provide everybody with all the tools possible. If micro weddings, elopement weddings, whatever they're being called in your area is something you want to do, then I think we have one of the top people here that can help you do that, right? If that's not something that's in, your business plan, then it's not in your business plan. And that's cool too, right? Because everybody kind of has their own thing. Even Morgan, earlier in the shows, made it very clear she has two totally different businesses, right? And one was very much geared towards, or at least at the time, I don't know if that's the case anymore, but at the time, one was geared very much towards the larger luxury. The other one was geared towards elopement. So it didn't even make sense for her to have it meshed in one, under one umbrella at that point.
I think it is different. I think it's a different animal. And I think as a vendor, you generally have to rethink what that means, right? If you're a photographer and trying to make X amount per hour, and then you're going 2 hours, and you have to make it work for yourself. But I just want to encourage vendors, don't just simply say like, that's not for me. Think about like, hey, if all of a sudden 50% of the wedding industry wanted to drop their guest count, which is what's trending, not 50%, but we're getting like every year more and more people dropping their guest count. Doesn't mean it's 30, but they're dropping their guest counts. And the prices are going up. What would that look like? How could I do something like that? Would that be an offering that would actually add value to my business or not? If it doesn't, totally fine. But for a lot of people, it really does help to think about that. And that it's couples that wouldn't book you otherwise are now thinking like, oh yeah, I could totally work with them because that fits my idea of the wedding experience that I want to have. But in general, I'm just going to say, I think couples are looking for something different, and that we're going to continue to see trends for really different wedding experiences and sort of a redefining of what this day has to be.
And I also think it's important for us to not look at this year and potentially even next year as an example of where things are going, because you said it earlier, like this year is like that big it's almost like that kid that finally gets their driver's license, or that person who finally can legally go out and drink. It's like, let's go crazy, and then that kind of simmers down and goes back to normal. And I think we're experiencing that in our industry right now. I don't know that it's going to be something that's going to trend for years and years and years and years moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, statistically, less people are getting married.
Yeah, I was just looking at these. Yeah, I was looking at that data while you were talking about it, and you're absolutely right. I mean, from I found a site that talks about the number of marriages in the United States from 1990 to 2019, and if you just go straight across, so 1990. 2.44 million weddings. 2019, obviously for some reasons, 2.02 million. In 18, 2.13 million. In 17, 2.24 million, and so on and so forth. So this graph, while there is a little bit of an increase during the beginning of the 2000s, go figure, with the millennium and all the kind of hoopla that was going on during the 1990 to year 2000, 2001. But then after 2001, it just dips and dips and dips and dips, and takes a little bit of an increase temporarily after 2014. But yeah, to your point, it's statistically, it is continually to decline. And it's never actually, the other thing, sorry to cut you off, but just one other point worth of value is it's never gone as high as 1990 since 1990.
And I think as it gets more expensive, and it's not just weddings, right? It's everything. It's, again, like houses. These are couples at a time in their life, generally, where they're making a lot of changes, big decisions, have things to do, and we're a really high ticket item. And so the traditional big wedding cost is. So just thinking about like, okay, if that were to not be as much of a priority, this is the business that I'm in. How should I think about that? And maybe that's like being high-end super luxury, and you're never going to be affected by that, and you just do 5 events a year. Go for it. Whatever works for you. But I do think this will continue to be a growing part, and it's so fun right now. I think it's awesome to look at what vendors have created. Pop-up weddings, tiny weddings, like they have different concepts. Like these are actually like different formats, different concepts. They have drive-through weddings. I mean, it's so cool to see what wedding vendors are coming up with and what couples are really resonating with. And it's a fun time. I think it's a fun time.
Nick, hit us with wisdom, man.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think the wedding industry is constantly changing, even from what I see on the video side of things and photography as well. That's a huge thing. You can see, like, even from the time that our parents or my parents have gotten married till now, I mean, the long form videos versus the shorter form videos, and then going back to the longer form videos. Now I'm seeing more people want that for some reason. It's just crazy to watch it happen. It's crazy to watch it evolve. And I think as long as you stay up with the data, with the trends and what's happening, I I think it's just fun to watch, and I think you could still run a really successful business for sure.
And that's the thing, is we're running businesses, right? I think a lot of people lose sight of like, oh, we don't want to look at the color trends for the year. I'm not talking about the color trends. Like, I think we need to look about like the data of like who's getting married and what they're spending and what the guest count is, and just make sure your product fits in there. But there's so much innovation, and video is like a huge thing that I think is about to see like really big growth in the wedding market. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially in the small wedding market, because you don't have everyone there.
Right. And I also think that when you, like you said, you know, you have more money, when you condense down the size, you go, okay, it allows for everything that I want. And maybe that didn't include a videographer, or, you know, that super cool lighting and the CO2 cannon. But now that I have, you know, bigger budget because there's less people, I'm going to ball out on all the other stuff too. And like, like having a video so I can share it on social media, which has been booming since, I mean, for how who knows how long now. I mean, so I think it's always changing. So
Frank?
Oh, sorry. I didn't know.
Sorry.
I thought there awkward pause. That was intentional, maybe. So yeah. So give us. I know we've talked a little bit about what people can expect, how they can kind of incorporate it in their business. Just what's up with small weddings right now? Like, what's the deal? What are some of the big things that you're seeing happening? If somebody wants to get in on this, what are some of those key things that they need to make sure that they're doing?
Yeah. So first of all, I think you should see what's happening around you. So are there vendors around in your like specific local market that you're in that are successfully doing that? What does that look like? It really is different everywhere. But I also think there's opportunity everywhere. So I would say first take a look at what's there. Next, take a look at what your couples are asking you for, because a lot of times you'll find that there's sort of reoccurring things that are happening, whether that's like a budget point, a guest count, a certain service that they keep asking for. Is that something that you could figure out how to do by rethinking, you know, how you do that offering in your business? And then I would take a look at just, you know, what you love doing. Because I also think that it really helps for this to be, you know, something that you're excited about. And I think that, like, you know, I created mine. This is what I would do. But I also think a lot of vendors love doing intimate weddings because you have this connection with your couples. You have this so much easier on site. You know, I mean, maybe really different for DJs, but still there's kind of a cool thing. And so really rethinking like, okay, I like this and I am, you know, good at this. I'm being asked for this. I'm seeing this. Can I find a way to make that profitable and add that? And the more creativity, the better, because couples look to us to figure out solutions. They're not coming to us and being like, I want to do a mini wedding and here's the 5 things that I want to do and here's what I want it to cost, right? They're like, this guy doesn't fit my price. We don't need this. We don't need this. How are we figuring out this? So if you have something, they're like, oh, I always recommend specifically create something for small weddings, whatever you want to call it, your elopement, your mini package, your micro package, whatever you want to call it. Just a side note, micro weddings is like one of the top trending searches on Google for all couples right now. So that is a major phrase that they are like owning. And so if you have something that you call that, have its own page for it, have that service spelled out, and make sure it's tailored specifically for small weddings. Don't just say like, yeah, we do those too. You can book us for 2 hours. Like, take the time to put together something that has a better value along with it and that couples are going to get excited about. But ultimately, this is kind of the Wild West. And so you really can create something that's fun. Like I said, one of my friends is doing drive-through weddings in Australia and they expanded to Vegas. And it's like the funkiest, funnest, like drag queen related. Like, it's so fun. And couples are absolutely loving it. And it's like off the wall, right? But you have couples. there's people who are doing tiny chapel weddings in Montreal and like making a killing, and like all these couples are coming to this beautifully decorated space with these amazing vendors, and there's multiple couples throughout one day. There's like 5 couples in a day. Those vendors are making a killing. All the couples are super happy because they're paying a fraction of the price. That's a smart business model. You know, it may not be for you, but it's not a bad business model. And then there's other, you know, elopement photographers or videographers that are going to create this day-long experiences outside of the wedding day. Like, we want to do a pre-video for you. We want to create this epic thing because it's just the 2 of you at this crazy destination. So let's like take advantage of that. So I really think there's so much opportunity right now. There's so much innovation, and our couples are looking for it. And now it's time to kind of throw it on the wall, see what sticks and what works for your business, what works for your couples. And you might be surprised. You might sell your business like I did and focus only on elopements because ultimately they have freed me up. I don't do them. I have an amazing team that does them. I'm never on site anymore. I love it. I mean, you really got to think about like, where do I want my business to be in 10 years? And our big weddings, how do they fit in there?
Wow.
Yeah,
This is awesome. I think the number one thing to sum up what you said in all of this is, you know, by no means, and I think Frank, you said it earlier as well, like by no means are we saying, hey guys, go totally change the way you do business, but more so saying, you know, this is something that has some statistical data behind to back it up. It's not just a hypothesis. It's not just a, well, it might happen. Like, this is something that is kind of a trend. And just like, you know, if, I have to speak on, you know, what we do from the entertainment side of things. So just like adding a photo booth or adding lighting or adding, you know, cold sparklers or whatever, or, you know, Asterolites or whatever the case may be, you're adding those things on as something else that you can offer that may satisfy only a percentage of your audience, but it's not going to satisfy 100% of your audience. And this is another, if you can kind of wrap your brain around it in the sense of, this is just one other tool in the toolbox that, or one other line item on the menu, if that's a better example for to resonate with, that we can offer as a business. It doesn't mean it's all we offer, but it's something else that we can offer.
That's right. And then maybe you sell your current business and go with just elopement weddings because, you know, you're the next coming of Morgan.
Boom.
And I think it's worth noting, I did a podcast on trend forecasting because I'm sort of obsessed with that and in the business world. But there's a thing, macro trends and micro trends, and photo booths are totally like micro trends. Like, they come and go. Elopements are a macro trend, like small weddings, that sort of thing is a macro trend. So that's why I do think it's worth investing in. I think it's smart business just to take a look at it, see if that works for you, because yes, it can totally just be one of your offerings, but I think it'll be more long-term than some of the micro trends.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that that you gave us to be able to share with you know, with our viewers and listeners and the like, was the top 10 tips for marketing to elopement couples. And I know this is I'm going to post the link in the chat here for that. Just maybe high level, what can somebody expect for jumping on that?
Yeah, hopefully tactical things that you can do to start attracting a different market, particularly if you're known for larger, more traditional weddings, how you can sort of attract couples who are looking to do something smaller because they aren't usually in the same spaces. They're not usually the ones that are like on the knot and stuff. They're outside of that because they know that they want something totally different.
Love it. Well, thank you. Well, so I posted the link in our chat there, and we've also included it in the summary of the show. So this is by no means are we trying to sell anything other than, you know, just offer some more additional content and additional information to help those that find this an interesting potential add to their business model and how they do things.
That's right.
Frank, Nick, anything else before we wrap it up? This has been awesome. Thank you, Morgan, for your time tonight.
So much information.
I got a lot of talking. Sorry, guys.
Okay, we love it.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to look at differently. And I think at our heart, since we are all creatives, it's fun to get a little bit innovative and ultimately shake up the industry. And it's ready for it. So,
Yep. Nick, what you got?
Sweet.
Anything before we go?
I can't thank you enough, Morgan, for your time and the information. It was fantastic. So I really do appreciate it, and awesome stuff for the listeners and viewers.
thank you. You're so welcome.
Frank, how about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I echo the same thing Nick said. Yeah, I think this is it was a really fun episode, right? Because this is one of those areas where it may not speak to everybody, right? But I think to not listen is doing your own business a disservice. That's just my own opinion, right? I mean, I got one thing that I'm for sure going to use. Happily Ever After will 100,000,000% be on my website soon.
I love it.
Love it. Yes,
Yeah.
that's a big trend. And I think the wedding industry would be really smart to continue this trend of having multiple events surrounding your wedding day, because ultimately that's more business for all of us. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense. I mean, I really do love do your wedding day intimate if that's what you want, and then have a big party for everyone that has no stress because you don't have those expectations. So I do think it's like great for the couple, but it's also good for business. And yeah, there's lots of ways to incorporate that, and really every vendor. So nobody's left out. You just might have to get a little bit more creative.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, thank you again, Morgan. Hang out with us for just a minute, if you will. But we're going to sign off live here in just a minute, but do hang out with us. Just a quick reminder for everybody. And by the way, our audience was very quiet today. So hopefully that means they were taking a lot of notes, because I know they were there. I saw them there, but they're a little bit more quiet than normal. So hopefully, again, that means they were taking some notes. But as always, we appreciate those of you that watch the show live. And of course, those of you that listen to the replay either on YouTube or on whatever podcast service that you subscribe to, feel free to listen to the replay of this as well. And we'll be sure to have all those links there. And Morgan, any last words before we say goodbye from you?
No, that's it. I mean, thank you so much for your time, all of you. It was just great chatting with other pros that we could just talk shop. And if anyone wants to have a comment, wants to run something by me, is like, no way, that's not happening in my market, is on Instagram. Feel free to DM me, Morgan M. Childs, over there. And I'd love to hear from you.
Love it. Very good. Well, thank you again. And just a reminder to everybody, if you're able to tune in tomorrow night and for our special episode interview with Jesse Cole, the owner of the Savannah Bananas baseball team. And we're going to talk about lessons that wedding pros can learn from a baseball team owner. So it's going to be pretty interesting. Thank you again, Morgan, for joining us tonight. And as always, we appreciate those of you who are our loyal followers, viewers, and listeners. And I think most of you are, but if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please be sure to do that. We'll see you guys next time on our next show. Have a great time.